All right, folks, I think we are now live. So I thought that today I would take a look at the G.I. Joe catalog, that being the 2025, the 1985 catalog. We've already taken a look at the other catalogs, that being the 82, 83, and 86. So I thought I'd continue on. However, first, just like to say to everybody, thank you for joining me today and also throughout the last year. Happened to be celebrating the first anniversary of this channel. I thank you everybody that's ever watched one of my videos, that's ever liked one of my videos, that's certainly subscribed. It's appreciated. I mean, what makes this fun is just interacting with everybody and like-minded people, people that enjoy things that I enjoy, in this case being vintage toy collecting, 80s nostalgia, 90s nostalgia, and specifically G.I. Joe. So thanks to everybody. Later on in this video, I'm going to be talking about where I see my channel for year 2 going. So if anybody's interested, then stay tuned to the end. But today, I had this advertised not for long because I just decided today to go live. So people join me live. That's fantastic. If they don't, then you can always catch it on the replay. I know that for a lot of you, it's still very early, but I had some times to kill. So I thought, why not just come on here live and talk about some G.I. Joe for a little bit. And hopefully we can all just sit back and enjoy, I guess. So this is 1985 G.I. Joe. I've often been convinced that this was peak G.I. Joe. This is when it was at its most popular. Some people say no, it's 84. For those of you that are younger might say it's some later years that came along. But this to me was peak G.I. Joe. We still hadn't gone fully sci-fi yet. We were still military themed. Primarily, there were some sci-fi elements, especially within Cobra, that were starting to take effect, but this was still pretty much a military theme. So we got a great shot here of G.I. Joe. So this is the booklet, this is the catalog, and of course you'd get one of these catalogs if you ever bought a larger vehicle. This would come inside, and of course it advertises all the toys that are available that year. Not all the toys came out in 1985 that are pictured in here, as some of them had come the years prior, but it's advertisement for things that you could find still in the stores for your parents at the time or for you to purchase, depending how old you were and how independent you were. So right from the get-go, just looking at this picture, I find it interesting that probably the most famous character of all time, the 1985 Snake Eyes, is in the back. He's next to Airborne, Barbecue, Quick Kicks on the other side, and the three heavily featured guys are Shipwreck, Alpine, and Bazooka. So I found that odd, and even Flint's over to the side with Lady J. I think that, I'm not sure who that is over there at the end, maybe Footloose. And you have Dusty as well. So you have the logo G.I. Joe, and of course you have what I'm assuming are air strikers that are flying over the G.I. Joe symbol. So if you flip over the catalog, you're going to take a look at some of the great toys that were available in 1985 for G.I. Joe. As you can see, start off with a couple of new release G.I. Joes that year, in particular for the Cobra side, and these were the Crimson Twins. So these two were sold together in a larger package, and there you have the Hasbro introducing these individuals, telling us a little bit that they're the Crimson Guard and they're the Crimson Guard leaders, and that if you read it out, it says G.I. Joe's most feared adversary. The Crimson Twins are mirror images of each other. When one gets hurt, the other feels pain. So that was a storyline that continued throughout not only the comics, but as well as the Sunbow cartoon. So there you go. Now, the next picture over is the Dreadnoks. So the Dreadnoks were introduced in 85. Zartan had been introduced the year prior, but there had been no Dreadnoks. So these were the first Dreadnoks to be introduced into the line, 1985. You have Ripper, Buzzer, and Torch. And they just indicate that these are the Dreadnoks, and they're part of, if I remove my thumb out of the way, Zartan's crew. So Zartan had been released the year prior, and here is Zartan, which you could still get in 1985, widely available. Here you have, looks like it's sort of a mail away. You send it in, you become part of the Mobile Strike Force, and you put some money on it, you put a stamp on it, you send it away, and then you get some goodies. And the catalog also shows the goodies that you would get that year. Very similar to the year prior as what you would get with this. I think this program had been going on for several years now, so there really isn't anything new that you would get. Now, flipping this open and going past the page, let's start off with the characters. So, as you can see here, sorry about the glare, try to do this so that you don't see it. These were the new figures that were introduced to G.I. Joe in 1985. So you can see that there were, 18 new characters that came on card that year. Of course, there were other characters or other figures that came with the vehicles, but these were the ones that you could get on card. So what did we get? Well, we got Footloose, we got Quick Kick, Lady J, of course, the iconic version 2 Snake Eyes, which is probably the most famous out of all the G.I. Joes that came before and that came after. You have not Airborne, but Airtight, Barbecue. You have Bazooka, Shipwreck, Flint, Alpine, Dusty. There's the Dreadnoks, the Crimson Guard, the Cobra Eel, the Frogman, and you have the Snow Serpent and the Televiper. So those were the 18 figures that came out that year. Those were brand new. Of course, you also got some accessory packs, and that's always, for those of us that would often lose accessories that came with the figures the years prior to, we were always able to go and get some new accessories the following year to sort of replenish those accessories that we ended up losing in things like the carpet and couch and whatnot. But below that, these were other figures that you were still able to go out there and purchase that were still in stores. And these had been released the years prior to. So you'll see a lot of 84 and 83 figures here, but these were still available. So you'll have Destro, Firefly, Baroness, looks like the Crimson, or sorry, not the Crimson, but the Cobra Trooper, Scrap Iron, Storm Shadow, of course, was still incredibly popular. Mutt and Junkyard, and then you had Blowtorch, Duke was still available, Gung Ho, Dusty, Roblox, Spirit and Freedom, Torpedo, and you also had, I can't remember these last couple of figures here, Ripcord and Snow Job. So you can still find these. Hasbro was still advertising these. They were still pushing these. So I'm of the belief that these were still around in stores that you could find. So these were the popular figures, I guess. They're selling well, and they continue to sell throughout 1985. As we continue to go down the sheet, and I'm not a big fan of these sheets that sort of open from top to bottom. I prefer the ones that open from left to right or right to left. It just makes it a lot easier to do stuff like this. But here are some battle stations that were still available in 1985. Now, these battle stations came out before 1985, but you have some super cool battle stations. You have the Biovac. You have that watchtower, which is just awesome. That's such a cool looking a little play set. And then you have, I think it's the Mountain Howitzer, excuse me. And we also have a few other accessories here. Machine Gun Defense Unit, that's A, the one where Snake Eyes is. The Missile Defense Unit, that's where Recondo is. And then Gung Ho is standing at the Mortar Defense Unit. So these were still around, and these were still being advertised by Hasbro. So that is still available. I apologize for the shakiness here. Let me see if I can, just noticing how shaky everything is. Let's see if I can do a little better job here. Let's see. Yeah, that's a lot better. At least it's not constantly shaking around in my hand. All right, so the new accessories that came out in 1985. So right there you'll have the Checkpoint. Absolutely fantastic little play set that you can get. Still one of my favorites that came out all time. You also have the air defense there as well. And then you also have the Cobra bunker, which wasn't that great. I think that they had a little bit of a gimmick in which if you struck it, it would break apart. I'm not sure, but I think that's it. Now, I've stared at this fellow here for some time, trying to figure out exactly who this was. But is this somebody that anybody that watches the video is watching now recognize who that is? Because I really can't tell who that is. And I don't know if that was some sort of prototype that they used in the picture, because they often did that back then, or if this is just somebody that I'm not recognizing. I thought first it might be Footloose, but it really doesn't look like Footloose, so I'm not sure. But anyways, let me know in the comments if you know who it is. Apologize for the shaking of the camera. I'm just zooming out. Some other things that came out in 1985. You have the Forward Observer. I have a little bit of this, which is really kind of cool. And I also have the ammo dump. Oh. And then I also have the rifle range. So those are the other accessories that you could get in 1985. So let's get over to some smaller mid-range vehicles that came out in 1985. So you'll see right in the very first. Now these ones, I think that they all came out in 1985 except for the top here, which is the claw. I don't think that the claw came out in 85, but again, it must have been a popular toy because they were still advertising it. You have the snake armor, which is still out, and that is brand new at the time. And then you had the flight pod, and better known as the Trouble Bubble, and that came out in 85. And I still think that that's probably one of the best small vehicles in G.I. Joe lore. And here's something that is completely sci-fi, but I absolutely just love this thing. I have one of these things, and it's still one of my favorite smaller vehicles. And this was really a great idea that G.I. Joe and Hasbro did, because they had a lot of larger vehicles, including incredibly larger playsets that came out in 1985, and those were incredibly expensive. These smaller toys allowed for parents, families that didn't really have the means to buy those other things, that they could still get smaller vehicles, and really well done and super cool vehicles for their kids to have to get at Christmas or birthdays, and not to feel left out. So that is absolutely fantastic for Hasbro going out that way. And then some other vehicles that came out that year. You have the weapon transport. You see they're being driven by Duke. You also have the bomb disposal little vehicle there. That was pretty cool. And you have this Cobra night landing, which is just really awesome. Absolutely love this little sort of inflatable raft. I have one of these things. I don't have it complete because it came with all sorts of accessories. As you can see there, not only the engine and the oars, but the machine gun at the front, and then the shovel and the radio. I don't know if everything's being shown there, but it's such a super cool looking little vehicle. Thank you, Bill, for joining. And it's absolutely a fantastic looking vehicle. Just love these things. I also love the dioramas that they put these vehicles in, because it just makes it look so cool. Just paints a picture in your head, especially if you're 10 or 11 or 12, of taking this thing outside and having adventures with it, because it's just not, you know, it doesn't have just a white backdrop. So well done on them. I'm sure it was intentional, not an accident. So here are some other smaller vehicles. The Asp had already been out. The Cobra Ferret, I think it came out in 85. The Fang certainly had been out since 1983. Fantastic vehicle. And I know for a fact it was around in 1985 because that was my first G.I. Joe vehicle that I got, actually first G.I. Joe toy that I got. So that was still around in 1985, came out in 83. And you have the Armadillo, that came out in 1985. Really super looking, cool little vehicle there. If you couldn't afford or have means to get the larger tanks, especially the other one that came out this year, this is something that you could easily get for very cheap back then. I think it was probably less than $10, probably $7 or $8 back in the day. The Skyhawk had been around for some time, and then the Silver Mirage, that was new for 1985, and super cool vehicle. It's a play on the Ram, I think, but way better looking vehicle. So that is the first side of the booklet. Let me just zoom out here a little bit. So this is the first side of the booklet, and there you go. So from the smaller vehicles and smaller play sets to the figures that came out that year and that were still available, to the highly promoted Crimson Guardsmen and the Dreadnoks. So they were playing up the Dreadnoks in 85 and still showing and selling Zartan in 1985. Now, let's flip over to the second page. And here we start getting into the larger vehicles. Now, not all of them came out in 1985. However, and let me put this down because it's... So not all vehicles came out in 1985. However, these ones were still around in 1985. So if you take a look at the top left corner, you'll have here the Stinger. Stinger had come out the years before, but again, I think it's one of those popular vehicles that had come out and was still around by 1985, so it's still selling well. As well, you have the Slugger. I constantly call this something else, but yes, that's the Slugger. And the Slugger had come out, I think, the year prior to 84. Came with a driver, Thunder, and the Stinger as well came with a driver as well. But the ones that came out in 1985 was the Ostriker. So the Ostriker also came with a figure as well, crankcase. And then the other vehicle that came out in 1985 was the Snowcat. And the Snowcat also came with its own driver, Frostbite. They don't do a very good job of showing the figures, but you can see Frostbite there driving, and you can see Crankcase as well driving, although really can't see much. Even looking at it closely, can't really see anything. There's a couple of water vehicles that were released in the year prior to, or the years prior to. So you have Shark, the Shark was still around and selling well. And it came with the Deep Six figure. And then you also had a really cool vehicle that I really liked as a kid. I didn't have it, but I thought it was just fantastic. The Water Moccasin that came with one of my favorite Cobras of all time, probably, and that being Copperhead. Just a super cool looking little vehicle that you would take with you to the lake or to the beach or even into the bathtub. I had a lot of adventures with that vehicle, and this super cool vehicle. As we continue going down, now here are some bigger vehicles that weren't that were from previous years, but they were still being offered in 1985. Classic Cobra Rattler comes with Wild Weasel, super cool vehicle. I think it's a must-have for anybody that's collecting G.I. Joe. I have a lot of fond memories of this particular vehicle. At the time, I had a really great friend that had this vehicle. He got it for Christmas, and he would always hide it in his room because he had a little brother that would destroy things. And every time that we visited his house, we constantly had to wait for the little kid to fall asleep so we could take it out and play with it so it wouldn't get damaged. And that little kid never fell asleep. So we had to wait usually until like midnight or 1 in the morning. And by that time, we had a chance to play with it for about maybe 10 to 15 minutes before I had to go home. So that vehicle just brings a lot of awesome memories to me. So I love that vehicle. It's part of my collection. It didn't come out in 1985, but certainly it was still around for sale in 1985. Super awesome vehicle. Another fantastic vehicle. One that I'm still yet to get in my collection is the Dragonfly. Love that vehicle. Absolutely love that vehicle. Of course, it comes with Wild Bill, the individual. I have that figure. I don't have this vehicle yet. Still looking for one in great shape. Had a chance a couple of months ago to actually buy one, but I didn't, and I so wish that I did because it was a really good price, and it's from a seller that I work with. Not work with, but work with in buying stuff from him. And it was just in great shape, but missed out on it. I love this vehicle because I also have a real special connection to this vehicle too as a kid. This was the only toy that my father actually bought for me. My father was a very pragmatic pragmatic man. Certainly, if it was something that, if it wasn't tools, or if it wasn't something that was, like a bike, it's something that he didn't buy. He left that for my mother to do. But this particular one, he was going through the flea market, and this had to be probably around 1985 or even 84. And there was one that was missing a few pieces, and he brought it home. And I remember my mother telling me, "Hey, your dad bought something for you." And I'd be like, "My dad? You bought me something, like a toy?" She's like, "Yeah, go check it out." And there comes my dad, who had hidden it and brought it into the living room, and I couldn't believe it. And it was just this really awesome vehicle that I had as a kid. The funny thing is that I let a cousin borrow this, and from my understanding, it got blown to smithereens when he put a whole bunch of firecrackers in it, and it got completely blown to nothingness. Never got it back, and I learned a lesson that day to make sure to not always borrow or lend things to people, and if you do, keep track of it. But awesome memory of this vehicle. I love this vehicle. Still looking for one, and when I find one that is in great shape, good price, definitely buying it. So let's move on to the next. The battle platform. See if I can fold it just right. There we go. The tactical battle platform is another great little play set. This thing was super cool, super awesome. As you can see, the amount of figures that you could put on there and just have fun. So if you missed out on the headquarters, which was still being offered in this year, then you could go ahead and you could purchase this particular play set and have a lot of fun with it. Just really great. I remember seeing this as a kid and wanting this. Actually saw one the other day at a toy show that I was at, and it just looked really good, really fantastic looking little playset. And it came out this year, so it came out in 1985. The next one was a little odd to me. This is the bridge layer. Came out with in 1985. It came with Toll Booth, the driver. And this one, I found this to be really odd as a kid. And I didn't know really what to make of this, because I thought, well, who wants the toy that transforms into a bridge, basically? It's got one little gun on it. I didn't see the appeal of this thing. I always thought it was kind of weird. But, from my understanding, it's based off a real military vehicle. And I guess that's cool. I don't know. But it's something that I never wanted. But I can see now as a grown adult, and especially knowing that it was actually modeled off a real world military vehicle, I can appreciate why people want this in their collection, why they want it. I certainly have the figure Toll Booth, but I don't have this vehicle. I have no desire to get it. But it is pretty cool nowadays knowing that, yeah, it's a vehicle that comes with its own bridge, and you can take it outside and sort of make little scenes where you need to have a bridge go over, a stream or some dangerous area, and for the vehicles to pass. That's awesome. But you know what? Even today, when people post videos and pictures of G.I. Joe vehicles from the early 80s, I hardly see this thing. I don't think that it's really one of those really wanted vehicles that collectors are looking for. But you know what? I appreciate it. Good on them for doing that. So the next page that we have here, and again, I have to sort of fold this because it's all difficult to fold, but I think it's important. So just before we get on to that hydrofoil there, you could tell on the battle, tactical battle platform, just all the little doohickeys it had. I really wish it would have come with a figure when it was originally sold. I think that would have made it better, but still really cool playset. And most playsets didn't come with figures anyway, so I guess this is just keeping in tradition with that. Now, one of the best vehicles of all time, and one that I don't have, is the Cobra Hydrofoil. What a magnificent vehicle that was released that year for G.I. Joe. Just an absolutely incredible vehicle. I don't know what this is based off, if there's an actual real ship out there that looks like this back in 1980s, 85 or 84 or whatever, but it is such a great looking vehicle. And it came with the pilot as well, the lamprey. There's not really nothing I can say that can add to what you can see in this picture. Super cool vehicle, all the missiles, all the guns. You have your cockpit and you know, you got your man gun on top. And as well, then if you open up the front, you also had those missiles that you see there in the top right picture, as well as the hatch in the back was removable so that you could actually see a engine, as you can see there on the bottom picture, just underneath the top right picture. So super cool vehicle, absolutely awesome. Another great vehicle that came out that year, and what a job. One of the more iconic vehicles, I would say, from GI, especially on the Cobra side. As we move along, something obviously that was still popular in 1985, the Sky Striker. This had come out years before, but it was still selling well, and it was still available if you looked hard enough. Also one of the greatest, most iconic vehicles in GI Joe history. Absolutely. I don't have this vehicle, but I certainly appreciate it. It came with with Ace, the pilot, who had a parachute as well. So great vehicle. Love this vehicle. Fantastic vehicle. Moving on to the bottom, the two pictures, and it's. I had a good laugh when they put these two pictures together, because the Killer Whale, it came out in '84. It is one of the greatest vehicles ever made. Certainly, it was my grail when I got back into recollecting my GI Joe collection. I had to get this. I finally got a really good one. No missing pieces, no broken parts, and it is absolutely my favorite GI Joe collectible that I have today. Great vehicle. It's next to what came out that year in 1985, that being the Mauler. As you can see, the Mauler is a tank. It's a super cool little vehicle because you can take the treads off the tires. It is battery operated, so you hit a little switch and it does move around. As you can see there in the bottom right corner picture, you see that they have these little compartments that you can take out, and you can put rifles in there or guns in there. It fits things as well. You can see a little bit of the back where the engine cap is removed, and you can actually see the engine as well. Super cool vehicle. This was the first GI Joe, of the GI Joe side, vehicle that I got as a kid. I still remember Christmas of 1985 like it was yesterday, and this was what was waiting for me underneath the tree. Love this vehicle. Now, the reason why I laughed when I saw these two vehicles put together, was because in 1985, of course, I had some big decisions to make when it came to Christmas. I was asked, which vehicle do you want? What do you want for Christmas? And both these vehicles were still out. I absolutely loved the Killer Whale. I spent about 6 months telling my mother that I wanted the Killer Whale. It was the Killer Whale that I wanted for Christmas. And then just a month or so before Christmas, I pivoted and I said, no, I'll take the Mauler. That's a decision that I kind of regretted all this time. Don't get me wrong, I love that Mauler. I had such a great blast with that thing, and that's certainly something that was going to be in my collection when I start to recollect again. But this is the one that was the grail, and I missed out on it. And it was impossible to find afterwards, after the Christmas of 1985. I really tried to go to every store, or I'll have my mother drive me to every toy store around to see if I could find it, and I couldn't. It was gone. It was forgotten. I would never again see one in person or even in stores until about maybe 40 years later, when I started seeing them at local toy shows. And of course, I ended up buying it as soon as I found one that was in great condition and at great price. So big shout out to Toy Lords again, because it was from Toy Lords, which I bought this particular vehicle. Loved it. I still love it to this day. So there you go. So those are a couple of vehicles that were still available in 1985. The Mauler, of course, is the vehicle that came out in 1985. Now, for the big one, 1985, the largest play set ever released. Let's see here. It's so big that I can't even fit it on camera. Trying to get this bent the right way. And there you go, folks. There it is. The USS Flagg, the aircraft carrier. This thing was just massive, and it came out in 1985. Yep, it came with one figure. and the figure, it would be being Admiral Keyhall. It also came with those two little vehicles that you see there in the middle. So I believe that it's sort of like a little vehicle that pulls around a gas refueling vehicle. But this thing was the mother lode of all vehicles. And man, I can't even get the whole picture in the screen. Hey, Joe Fan, I just see you stop by. Of course, you're at work. You're always at work. But thanks for stopping by. And he says that he'll catch the replay later. All right. Thanks, Joe Fan. You work way too hard, my man. Every time that I see one of your comments in anybody's live videos, you're always working. You got to take it easy sometimes. But here we go. We got the USS Flagg. There are those two vehicles that I mentioned. As you can see, get the glare on. You could fit the whole plane there, the Sky Striker in there. There's the Dragonfly, which is a pretty big vehicle. It looks completely tiny there. And that was the big one. So there's a little bit of a picture of the inside. So that is inside where, and right now the name escapes me, of the cockpit for the ship. Anyways, you guys know what I'm talking about. And of course, it had so many features that really, it can't even feature them all. Super cool, absolutely cool, little gigantic playset. It measures, what, 7.5 feet long. I believe that it's about almost 4 feet wide. Maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more, but just an absolutely great play set. I remember when this came out, it was around $100 Canadian, maybe a little bit more than that, because I've listened to a lot of other YouTubers who reviewed this that state that back in the day it was around $100 US. So, which of course means it had to be more than $100 Canadian, so 120, 130, I'm not sure. But this thing was around $100 back then. And $100 back then was a lot of money. I did not know anybody on my block or any of my friends or anybody that had this thing. If you did, let me know in the comments. Be cool to actually know which of you were lucky enough to have this, or at least have friends or family members that had this. You could go and look at it and play with it. I remember just being a kid and just looking at this and thinking to myself, what is it that I would ever do with this? I mean, it sits there. It doesn't move around. It would take up the majority of my bedroom on the floor. I don't know where I would put this, and just being confused by it, but still being in awe of its gigantic size. So absolutely love this thing. This is something that I think that for those collectors that have the means, that have the room, that have the availability, that aren't going to get killed by their partners if they go and purchase this. I think that if you have that availability, you probably should get this thing. And I know a lot of you have this thing, and good on you. I just don't have the room for this thing. There's literally nowhere I don't know, I'd put this out on my deck. I'm not sure where I would put this, but it is just absolutely awesome. Still the biggest playset, I think, of all time. Fantastic. Now, another little playset that had come out years prior to, but it was still available in 1985. That was of course, the G.I. Joe headquarters. That was still around. That was another super great playset. Fantastic playset. Fantastic year for G.I. Joe. 1985. Was it peak year for G.I. Joe? That's a tough one. I mean, the USS Flagg, some of these awesome figures like Flint and also Snake Eyes. There's a great argument for 1985 being the greatest G.I. Joe year of all time. Some might say 84, maybe even 83. And of course, there's always those younger guys that will say, no, it was, 88 or 87. And of course, that's the fun part. All of us have something to choose from, no matter what our likes may be. Anyways, folks, so that is the pamphlet or the catalog for 1985. Of course, I thank you all for joining, as always. I'll leave it here on the whale. I just want to talk a little bit about where I want this channel to go in year 2. I know that there's been a heavy focus on my part about GI Joe and vintage GI Joe toys. That will continue going into the future because it was such a large part of my life in the 80s of growing up. But I do want to start focusing more on 80s and 90s nostalgia overall. I do want to take a look at other toys that came out from those years. I also want to take a look at maybe some modern toys that reminds me of those toys of those years, like Delta 17 toys, for example. But I also want to take a look at other stuff that made the 80s and 90s so great. I want to take a look at maybe doing some shows and doing some live shows on, the cartoons of the 80s, the sitcoms of the 80s, the sitcoms of the 90s, the movies that came out, the music that came out those years, and sort of be more focused on the nostalgia aspect of the 80s decade and then the 90s decade, especially the early part of the 90s decade, just because I was in it. So I want to do some more live shows. I think that if I do shows like that sort of differ from focusing on the vintage toys, that it will be live because the best part about doing this YouTube stuff, and a lot of you that know it already know that it's the interaction that makes this worthwhile. Sometimes it's a lot of work. Sometimes I don't want to do it, but at the same time, it's just great interacting with you. So I love reading all the comments. I like just replying to comments, even if it's not on my video, it's on your guys' videos, because I'm always commenting on videos, and that's what makes this all worthwhile. It's the community. In this particular case, it's the vintage toy community that makes making videos like this fun and makes it a great little pastime for me. So thank you all for watching. Absolute pleasure doing these things. I know that there wasn't a lot of attendance today, but that's just because that I started just advertising maybe a half an hour before I decided to go live. And it's about what? It's 1:30 right now here on the West Coast. And it's probably 4:30 out there in the East. So I understand there wasn't a lot of time for people to show up, but that's okay. For those of you that want, we'll catch it on the replay anyways, and that's cool too. So thank you all for watching. I appreciate all the views. And as always, I wish you all happy memory hunting.